talk to an audience than chairs. So this is really exciting, and having some people in the audience to relate to. I mean, that's.
Hold on. I'm sorry. I messed up the audio. Give a round of applause for Justin Piccari.
Hey, thank you. Thank you very much. I am excited to be back. Thank you, Seth, for bringing me back, and Teresa as well, and Flashpoint for bringing this as well. I'm excited to be using some of this gear tonight. I have a nice 600 watt second light up here that I'm going to base everything off of. And this is a single light demo. So I'm talking about the Gravitas you can bring with just one light. All kinds of effects, different styles, placement, storytelling through everything. So first off, I'm going to let you know my camera here. I'm going to be shooting on a Sony a7R5 with a 24-70 G Master. This is my nice war-worn Mark I of this lens. We had the Sony reps here earlier, and they were just mesmerized this wonderful museum quality lens. I love it. It is an absolute workhorse, and it does everything I need it to do. So I'm stoked to be using it here. So I put together a little bit of a slideshow presentation before we get into some of the demos, because I really kind of wanted to talk about what the inspiration for some of this single light stuff is. You know, you think about single light, and you might look at something like, oh, hey, let's put a big modifier on it and get, you know, lots of white and cover areas and how we can do things. But you can really use a lot of different tools to tell a lot of different stories in a lot of different ways with minimal equipment and minimal space. Personally, I work in a small space myself. It's about the size of this here without this wonderful extra area. So we have more room here than I'm used to, which is great to be able to show something like this. So to start it off, I wanted to bring in my lovely slideshow effects and talk about single light Gravitas. Why a single light? Well, there's a lot you can do with very little equipment. And if you don't use off-camera flash currently, being able to learn a little bit about, hey, I don't have to invest in a full kit to be able to practice, to be able to see what I'm doing, how to try things, is kind of a nice thing. It takes the intimidation of buying 4 or 5 lights and a ton of different modifiers off the table. Throughout the demo today, I'm going to use 3 different modifiers that I've kind of picked to not only show you some different effects, but to be able to say, okay, this is interesting to me. I like this. Maybe I'll try that one. And I'll start up here with this deeper 7-inch classic reflector. These guys are the most economy type of modifier you can buy. There is one that comes in the kit, which is this guy here, and it works perfectly fine for basic applications, but I actually prefer the little $12 one better because it gives me some other options like grids and barn doors and different attachments that I can use that are all very affordable and can do a lot within the story. So single light lets you do things like direct story focus. So in a lot of broad lighting things, when you have big white areas and you're filling the story, you might not be able to say, here's what I want you to see. This is what I want you to know about this image. So when you're using more of a single light and higher contrast things, you're able to say, I'm telling you, this is what I want you to look at. And you probably saw that image when it first came up of that wonderful model, Sean, and being able to see the intensity in that type of image. And I have some more images for you. It allows you to create dynamic light. If you don't have broad light where you're covering everything with light, you can really direct that light and say, I want this to do this angle. I want these shadows to connect. I want to really create a story rather than just documenting that story. You can add drama. Contrast, shadowing, all that good stuff allows you to really create more of a story that's not always maybe the happiest. Or maybe it goes to happy, but there is a dramatic aspect to it one way or another. Emotions are a big part of dynamic light. And you can also practice observing light. If you have broad light covering everything and you're filling the area, you might not be able to see as much study. Whereas if you take one light, put it with this angle, and I'm going to do this with Erica over here, we're going to work into an area where I can say we have to keep turning her. We can keep turning the light and find those moments to observe what works best with her face, what works best with her body, all these different things that you can't do when you have too many lights going at once. And if you're not observing that light, it's part of being a photographer is our job to observe. So there we go. And finally, it's about trying a new photographic style. This is something that is it's really fun to do if you're used to shooting a certain way. Learning something new, which is hopefully why you're here, is really fun. So I'm going to tell you a demo, and then you go home and try this, and it's going to give you a different process and a different practice than you might have here. All right. And then the other one is to avoid background detail. Now, this is my little secret for being in a small space. Most of the work of mine that you'll see is shot in a tiny, tiny little space. You don't always have places. I don't have this high of a ceiling. I don't have this much breadth. You can't bring in big props and lots of details in the background. So to do that, to cut that, I just avoid it. Don't show it. And so it's a good way to get around that, but still get pictures that you really, truly love. All right. So I want to talk about two terms here. We're going to do a little art history lesson. I promise I'll keep it brief so you don't fall asleep. There's a little bit of history in some of where these styles come from, and I personally really love that, so I wanted to share my love with all of you. The first term is chiaroscuro. You might have heard this term before. It gets thrown around a lot, and it sounds like a fancy term. It's essentially about using light and contrast to make a 2D item look 3D. It's used a lot during Renaissance and times like that to make the figures come alive and come off the page. A lot of times people will confuse that or use it interchangeably with the word tenebrism. Tenebrism is more of what we're focusing on today. Tenebrism is a very harsh light to dark, bright to dark, and that's what we're looking for today. And we can get those little definitions in here if that matters. The chiaroscuro is an Italian term. Tenebrism comes more from Latin, but you can see those there. And I'm going to leave these up for just a second so that anybody who wants to write them down or all that, great. All right. Let's get into some of these styles here. So we're going to talk about front lighting first. So this image is kind of a front light that I really like doing. It was a single light. It's a beauty dish. I'm not going to focus too much on this one today. It's a straightforward style. You know what? Let's do it. Why not? We're going to put this up. We like doing it. She's here. Let's put her to work, right? We're going to drop this off for a second. So first I'll start off with then this 44-inch power snap box that we put up. And if you guys haven't used any of these ones, it's so cool. Look at how big that is. It was just out of my way. Now it's in my way and we're ready to use it. Snap it up. We're in. All right. Let's not get too high with this. We'll just go out. So with this shot, it's essentially straight on. Now with this shot, I was looking for more of an isolation. So Eric, I'm actually going to have you come. Let's go about 2 feet forward off that background, and we'll go here. This shot was all about, and what we're going to do here, this shot is all about separating her from the background. Why are we doing that? Well, if I put her too close to the background, go back to the background first. We're going to use the same exposure. Safely move this light so Seth doesn't yell at me. All right, and let's take this shot here first.
You heard Erica, she'll yell at you, don't worry.
Perfect. All right, so that might help. All right, so I have it in black and white too, so you guys can look at that, but the raw will be in color. Let's get a little bit of an exposure. Can you turn your face that way, just a hair? There we go. All right. All right. So a shot like this, where the shadow isn't too much there, we get a little bit of shape with her. But if you kind of look a little hard to see on the screen, but you can kind of see it on the big screen here. Let me move this modifier back for those of you that are here too. Got it on the side as well. All right, can you see it on the difference on the side there? Let me look. You can see the background there. Do you see how the background's a little bit gray? There isn't exactly a full black into that background. So if I have her step 2 feet this way, move the light back a little bit, and then back in my way, and then do the same exact shot. Look at the difference in that background and how much more there is more of a darkness. Yeah, we're just about black, perfectly black there. I can change the exposure around a little bit, bring her out more, come a little bit closer to me. And let's go to here. All right, there we go. Now we're black in the background. And all I did was move her and the light back. And that's all we did. So I changed nothing but that. And when I go back to this image, that's essentially how that's achieved. Just doing a big separation, one light, and all we did was change the model. And if you have a little bit of trickiness with the space, you can, of course, work with your focal length and things like that to be able to work out a nice medium. And that is why I shoot a lot with a 24-70. You probably know some of the perspective things that change as you get closer and further away from somebody, and the warping of their features. So you have to be a little careful with that. But pretty much anything from 35 to that 70, we're going to get a kind of similar effect as long as you're not right up on them. So it's all about that separation there. And like this image that's up on the screen now, this was created with just a little bit of wind and one light. And I think that's really fun. One of the ways that you can tell it's one light is if you look at the specular highlight in her eye, you can see that there's only one piece there. And that's how we know that that was one light rather than a couple or any reflectors or anything like that. All right. Backlight. We can use this modifier. Look at that. So backlight can go a couple different ways. This image was obviously created with smoke. And this was a little bit different of a modifier than what I'm going to show you today. I thought this would be more fun with some nice big modifiers. That was just one of these little guys directly behind the model and just letting it kind of splash light up and catch all that smoke and texture and everything like that. And I think that's a lot of fun. But I thought it would be cool to show you some different techniques that are kind of more fun to play with in terms of variability and textures and all that kind of stuff as well, and can use a different modifier. So we are going to pull this 44 out. All right. We can hear really quick. All right. So to start with, we're just going to go with a open light. Stop it from turning. And then, let me just scoot that back just a little further. Give you some more space. All right. So for the first one, all I'm taking is the modifier and Erica, and that's it. So if you can give me a pose where maybe we get a little bit of the space up like that, exactly. I'm sorry? Tether, yeah. Right.
Cleavage.
Some sleevage, and then you can go up back to the light. There you go, exactly. All right. So through nothing but backing her up to that light and that open light there, and especially if we come in and crop a little bit more, we can kind of have an illusion of this white background and just a little bit of light wrapping around her, the texture of the hair, a little bit of the movement in the clothes and different things like that. And you can even see, and it's one of my favorite parts, it's why I had her wear black and white today. You can see in there that white part of the outfit just takes that light and reflects it, while the black allows it to fall back. So you do create that contrast. And if you go into the black and white image, you get those tonal shifts. And we aren't doing anything tricky. One light behind, shooting through, there we go. And I really love that effect for different things. If you do that pose again, let's turn your head to the side just a bit. Yep, there we go. And we start to bring in some of the architecture of her face a little bit. So now we have different pieces of the nose and the chin, and everything starts to wrap differently. Do a similar thing. Let's turn. Yeah, either way is fine. Leave this arm down. There we go. And then turn your face that way. Works a little bit. Yep. Now we can get more of the neck and all of that. So it's just about playing with those angles, and we have a very nice high contrast black and white image. And you can even see here, I'm not even cropping this image, and it's its own composition. We don't have to worry about that this is as big as it is. Now, if you have a 60-inch or something cool and crazy like that, even better. But even with 44 inches, there's enough there to create a nice portrait composition. And let's do one more pose. I'm going to have you turn to one side or the other, whichever is, that works. Great. Let's have your head turn back over that way. And then there you go. Actually, drop the left hand. Turn your chest more towards that way, and then kick your head back harder. There. See how this goes. So there's even more drama and more storytelling. And we even got a little specular highlight in that eye. How cool is that? The eyes, if you don't have a specular highlight, tend to look a little dead. So if you're getting a picture of an eye, if you can get some of that highlight in there, it's really going to bring the person to life and give them a story. Sometimes a happy story, sometimes a sad, but it starts to really bring that drama to the page. And I love that personally. All right, we're gonna do the same setup with one modification. And that is introducing a board. All right. All right. This little piece of foam board up against this modifier is now going to be my backdrop. We wanted to get about even, and then we'll have Erica go in front of it. Actually, we're going to raise up. Yeah. Raise this guy up a little bit too. There we go. All right. And we'll have her go about this. So I'm going to show you 3 different pieces with this. All right. All we do is add this board. Go up against it first. Okay. All right. So we can see here that her up against it in the color, I have a creative style set for the black and white. So it has a higher contrast and some shadowing for a later idea. But you can see in the color version, there's a little bit of that haloing around the hand, not super bright. If you take half a step out, great. We start to get a highlight around her hair. And you know, I'm actually going to pop the light a little bit higher. We're blocking a lot of light, so I'm going to add more to the flash. Let me do that same thing again. There we go, much better. And actually step up against it again. Let's do the same thing. We're going to not step on the tethering cable and then do this. All right, there we go. All right, so that's up against with the black and white. And then the stepped forward a little bit with the black and white. And you start to get a little bit of that just complete rim around her. Take a step further, and I'm going to take a step back. Take half a step that way. There you go. Beautiful. All right. And now we see how much more comes in. And I really love these images because it's really letting me direct the part of the story that I want to see. Now, obviously here, we're not seeing too much of her face, but we get the hair detail, which is really fun. The shoulders, all those different curves. Now, if you do a pose this time for me, let's get the hands up over the shoulders a little bit more. Beautiful. I like the delicacy of that hand too. It's very nice. And then have your face turned a little bit more that way. Chin down and turn your face a little bit back to me. Great. A little bit more, to face a little bit more to me, but same type of idea. There we go. Awesome. See how much more story we can bring into that by starting to introduce the eye, starting to introduce more of the face versus no face at all. And there's more dynamics that can come through that we can make a subtle portrait, whether in color, which now we see a little bit more, or that black and white, where it really starts to let us determine what we want to show and how we want to show it. And I think I really like these as powerful portraiture because you can really kind of direct the parts without having to worry about isolating light or having ambient things or necessarily what she's wearing or anything like that. They all play a part and you get to direct that story. You can have a simple piece of fabric on the model and that fabric is going to become a texture. If we zoom in on her shoulder, look at that texture that comes through from just a sweater. And it's beautiful. There's a lot of that contrast to really drag out, and the sweater tells a story. If it was silk, if it was a tulle, if it was any of these different materials, they all are part of that story, and I'm choosing to show it or not show it. If we want to flag it or change it, it gives us those different opportunities. Let's do one. Yeah, I want to see a little bit more of that collar. That's good. Just so you can kind of see how much more we bring in that collar. So let's turn sideways and then coming down. That great. See if I can get that to reflect nicely. Different textures, right? It's a completely different thing than the texture of that woven cotton. And now we have some skin tone textures. We have the whatever this material is here, ribbon material that has a completely different feeling. and all we did was change angles. Because we're minimalizing that light and we don't have everything showing, we're able to really say, this is what's important. This is what we want to tell the story of. And it becomes a different story than if I had just blasted her with light and called it a day. All right, broad lighting. This one, typically a term for the lighting when you're talking about the face and things like that, where you put it on what the widest part to show and the other side, kind of like that front lighting I was showing before, would be considered broad lighting. I'm using it in this term to say for the whole area. Now I'm talking about getting big, I'm getting wide, and more than anything, using the shadow to tell a story. I'm going to hold off on showing you a demo on this because I have some little sketches to show you some different uses of this. But as part of the style, we have this. Side lighting. Now, side lighting or rim lighting is one of my absolute favorite things to do. In this particular demo, I struggled to find a ton of pictures that were just one light because I really like the kicker. I think it's a lot of fun. You can tell that same story that we were just talking about with that backlight, but now you have it with the side and adding other lights in to continue to tell the story. But for the sake of this, let's talk about that. Side lighting, rim lighting is now an asymmetrical version of what we just did, right? What we just did now is about evenness all the way around the figure. You can see the whole figure in a silhouette. You can start to add reflection in, all this different things, but side lighting is now asymmetrical. So this particular setup, I really liked showing this slide because that's the end of the picture. You start to create mystery on the back and you can tell the story from the front. And there's lots of good ways to tell the geometry and the anatomy of the figure in those ways. We'll get into a demo of that too. All right, and then the last one is Rembrandt lighting. Now, if you've heard of this style before, that's awesome. One of those key portrait lighting pieces. But Rembrandt is part of that Chiaroscuro Tenebrism era, and that's where all of this got known for. The most important key of this is that triangle on the cheek. That's how you can identify Rembrandt lighting. There's different pieces that come in and out of that, where as you're moving, it's different types of lighting with butterfly and all that other fun stuff, depending on where it is. I really love Rembrandt lighting. It defines the figure. I mean, how dynamic is he? There's so much going on in that face, and it's such a dynamic lighting. And the hair, the texture is so cool how he had his hair styled, where you get a little bit of that gray going up, and absolutely beautiful. All right. So I said I wanted to bring in some art history. We talked about the terms. Now I want to talk about some of the artists really quick. Kind of the acknowledged father of Tenebrism is Caravaggio, an Italian painter. And he was known for some of his storytelling with that Tenebrism idea. You can see the figure on the left, which is a bit of a cropped figure on Judith there, and her handmaiden. And so much is lost into the shadow on purpose. It isn't, as a painter, it's different than a photographer, right? We are observers and we can choose to light different things. As a painter, they choose everything they put on the page. It's a blank canvas and they choose it. He chose to avoid all of those details in the background to show the drama of this story of Judith making her decision with Holofernes. That's how you pronounce his name. And then the calling of Saint Matthew, I believe that is on the right. Pardon forgetting my pieces here. And you can see the dynamic shadow coming through that piece, right? Big and bright on the right, really driving all the drama down to the left. Your eye catches the brightest thing on the page, just as photography. So you catch that light and it slams you down to the left there where all those figures are. And that hand coming across is really helping that drama move. And those figures are just lost into the background, and the details start to become more about the figure than the flower that's on the table or the drink or whatever it might be. And it's a purposeful decision, and I love that. Somebody who really followed after him was Artemisia Gentileschi, and she was one of the few female painters of the time who really brought things together. This is her version of Judith and the Handmaiden there. And I forget that painting, I'm sorry. But it is again, you can see the intelligence in the way that she described that light, and let it be light and dark and high contrast, and the power and the drama that you feel in that. It's very different than something where everything's full color, right? And that black can really allow that power to drive the story rather than having everything be there, that you look at everything and all the details matter. They're incredible and awesome, but this drives it, tells you what story you need to look at. Albert Dürer, who was mostly known for his engravings, but did a bunch of paintings as well. And here's a self-portrait of his. And you can see, what does that look like? That front light portrait that I did earlier, right? And it's a really fun way to, if you look at his self-portraits over the years, and you start to get this image where he really chose to let that black overtake the scene and really focus on who the figure is in the front. He's such an interesting looking dude. I love it. All right. And then here we are with Rembrandt. So this is the guy we were talking about earlier with the triangle. I wanted to show you a few examples of his pieces. The one on the right is actually a self-portrait of his, obviously in his later years. But in both of them, you can really get a sense of that cheek. And you have that light coming in from the side and then all that darkness on the other side. And the character, of course, on the left, the detail isn't really there in the background, more of a straight background. He lets those blacks fade without textures, without any highlights in the fabric. And then his on the right with that beautifully textural old man. It's really cool. All right. Oh, right. Yes, they're both self-portrait. One was younger. He had another younger one that I was trying to pull, but it didn't have the triangle as much as I wanted, so we're bringing it in. All right, so Rembrandt lighting. I did a little sketch here because if the evidence wasn't enough, this is what Rembrandt lighting kind of looks like. I tend to like to sketch things out when I think about what I'm shooting. And a lot of that reason is because it's ideation. It's thinking about what you want to shoot with intention versus just the observation of the scene. Observation is obviously important, and even shooting with Erica here, we're going in with what we planned. We're going to do Rembrandt lighting. But as she moves, as she poses, I'm going to say, I want to show you Rembrandt lighting, but let's see what else we can get as we're going. So let's adjust this here. Drop this C-stand. Perfect. And we'll take this guy down, unlock, and out of the way. All right. All right. Going with this nice 7-inch here. All right, let's take a look. So we're going to try one shot and see where my angle is first. See how we're doing. Back to the tether. Way too bright. That's why we got to adjust down. There we are. The difference between this one and that last modifier, by the way, just so you can understand this exposure. If you're not too familiar with the off-camera flash stuff. This last modifier is obviously quite massive. It's huge. Needs a lot more light to pump out to kind of light the same area as a smaller modifier. As well as this has 2 baffles inside, or these guys. There's one on the inside, and then there's the outside one. They absorb a lot of light. I think they're half a stop each. Stop and a half? Yeah. Quite a bit of light is absorbed. So we have gained a lot of light by opening it up. The grid is on here. If you're not familiar with these guys, these go on, you can see straight through it, right? But now you can't see straight through it. And that's what they do. This is a 20 degree, this is a 40 degree. So if you can't see through it, the light can't see through it. And that's what they're used for. So I already have a pretty small modifier here that I'm making the beam even smaller. And there's multiple reasons I'm doing that. One of the reasons is keeping it off the background as much as possible. So that same type of thing we were talking about before about how much space to have between the background and the light, and the model, is now saying we can have that by not having to worry about her being all the way up here to avoid hitting the background. She can be closer and closer the less space I have. Keep her about there because that's where the light is. But all right. So you're going to tilt your face a little that way, yeah? All right. Let's bring this around a little bit then. It's probably good. Yep. There we go. Almost there. Just same type of thing, just a little bit more of an angle. There we go. All right, beautiful. Nailed it. So this is with that style on it. And the style obviously here had some contrast added and things like that. If we go to the color, there's your color, but we still have that beautiful triangle on her cheek there. Letting her cheek and her hair fall into the black. Can you put your jacket on? One of the things I did want to play with this here, the white of her shirt in the black and white really starts to overtake, right? You see that first because it's the brightest, whitest thing on the page. So if we now put this black on her, and you can kind of bring it together a little bit more. Yep, there we go. Let's go with that. Yeah, that's probably good. Right. So there you can see how much more we can let her fade into black. And I didn't really do anything except change what she was wearing so that the reflection of that light off of her became more absorbed and she falls into the background. So we isolate with that awesome. How about, can you try putting it together? I want to see if we can, there we go, like a nice V. And then on this side, can you put your, the other side? Can you put your, there you go, great. Otherwise, same thing. Didn't quite catch the earring. A little bit in there, a little bit. You can see them on both sides, here and here. But we can start to play with what she's wearing and saying, okay, here we have that great V on the outfit. If we let's try it this way. How about this? Take a half a step forward. I'm going to adjust this a little way. And turn your head a little bit harder in that. See if we can get that V. Yeah. Still didn't quite pop that, but we start to play with those angles. And this is where, as I was talking about before, we can start to play with the angle of the person, the angle of the face. And all I'm doing as that happened, you saw that she moved forward and I turned the modifier more this way. It starts to change. We can keep that triangle, but now her face has a different angle. And that's all we're doing is just following the angle of her face. The angle, that shadow is a combination of the nose and the cheekbone. That's what that is. It's a projection of the nose down onto the face and then the cheekbone. So if you follow that angle as you go around, you continue to do that. Take a step forward. Now turn your head harder. See if we can get it even more. There we go. So it becomes more and more of kind of almost a rim light, except it's coming from a directed source, and it's really allowed that cheekbone to fill in there. Bring the reflecting around something else, I think. Yeah, we'll bring it on something else. All right, so that is Rembrandt lighting. And it's a really fun one to play with because it makes you do two things. One, it makes you think about what you're lighting, which is really cool. And it gives you real observation of your model. You can see Erica has these lovely cheekbones and a very dynamic shaped nose, beautiful. And it allows you to really play with all those shapes as you're observing your person. It's not about just taking a photograph of her. It's about who she is as an individual, what she brings to the table. You can't use Rembrandt lighting with everybody. It's a very harsh lighting. Some people, it makes them look old. Sometimes you want a really old figure. You have like somebody in their 70s or 80s and you light them with Rembrandt. It really draws out every wrinkle and it tells the story of this war-worn face, and expressions can get crazy and you can really tell a story with something by bringing that out. But it is a very selective lighting. Don't expect beauty with this because it is not meant for that. This is very hard, but the shapes are beautiful and it lets you observe. You can always go from this to adding a second light and doing a rim light or something like that and bringing out more of the figure. This just tells the story of that initial person. That's your main light. All right, so back to this. So obviously that's my example of Rembrandt lighting there. We did this backlighting one earlier just to give you a little bit more of a sketch to make you see kind of where you want to have people and what you want to do. And again, this was all ideation for me. So I knew what I was doing coming into this because of being able to sketch this out and think it out ahead of time. Here's the modifier I want. Here's the board I want to put in front of it. Here's how the model should look when I'm finished with this. And knowing that. Yes, sir?
Someone in the chat's asking, why not use a softbox?
Why not use a softbox for the Rembrandt lighting? Okay, you absolutely can use a softbox. I wouldn't use a softbox rectangular because of the highlight that you're going to get in the eye. And usually when you get that specular highlight, you're looking for something that imitates the sun because it feels more natural. If you're doing a building shot and it's supposed to be I'm looking out the window, obviously, hey, great, rectangles, makes sense. But if it's a general beauty portrait or elements like that, circular. You can absolutely use Sorry, I just saw Martine's little message there. Hey, Martine. You absolutely can use a softbox. I would aim for a beauty dish, or I actually have a wonderful, it's actually from Glow as well, 26-inch parabolic that I love working with. It's a deep parabolic because it allows me to direct that shape more. But the trick with any softbox, the more diffusion, the more spread. In addition to the more spread, the more power you need out of the light. If you're working with a 200-watt second light, it's a lot harder to use a softbox to get this kind of isolation with the black background than it is with this 7-inch. This 7-inch is one of my absolute favorite tools. There's a lot of photographers that'll disagree with me because they'll say you need a bigger softbox to get more dynamic shapes. I love the small one, and personally, I think my work kind of speaks for itself. When you look at it and you say, wow, this came out really good, it's like, yeah, the modifier doesn't matter so much as how you use the tool. If I'm using the tool in a bigger space with more people and all things like that, bigger 1200-watt second lights, yeah, use the softbox. We tried it out with the 44-inch earlier. The picture of Sean, the model in that Rembrandt lighting thing, was shot with a giant softbox with a constant light. It depends on the situation, what modifiers you have. You can do it with whatever. Observe, try it, see what happens. And it works out really well for however you want to use it. Did we hit the question well enough? All right, great. All right, so there's backlighting. All right, which angle? I put this in here because I think that this is kind of interesting. And while I'm talking, I'm going to switch to a different modifier here. Angle is something that I find to be a matter of preference as well. There's a lot of photographers that are saying you have to shoot it this way. It's important to put your subject's face in the key light, and that they have to be the brightest part of the page. I think there's a time and a place for that, and I think there's a time and a place for putting on the opposite side. So we're going to do a shot here with Erica, and we're going to do a little bit of reverse. I don't want to put a V flat up in front of you guys so you can see what we're doing. I think that's important, right, Seth?
That's still with us.
I mean, if you're going to demo, you want to see the demonstration. You know.
All right, so we'll start with this light here, and if you take a half a step forward. So this is the rim light that I was talking about earlier, and this is one of my favorite techniques. Now, you can, let's go to this other slide here. Okay. These are some images that, by the way, I have not shown anywhere yet, and at least one of them is going into a competition, so I don't want to show them to the entire world outside of all you watching this, so nobody else is seeing this right now. Shh. It's not broadcast on the internet or anything. But this is kind of an example of when to use that lighting on which angle, right? So here we have a guy where the first image all the way on the left, we have the key light hitting the broadside of his face. He falls into the black. We have the backlighting here where it tells a completely different story. And then on the right, the hard light is actually coming on the backside of his face. And the rest of the light, all it is reflection. It's just one of these guys. So it's just one light, but you're able to really tell different stories with one light coming from different angles. Everyone has its own place to go, and they all have a reason. I personally am a big fan of that one on the right. It's my absolute favorite shot, and it was intentional. It was not accidental, but we really had fun shooting that. Sir?
Someone's asking if this shot needs smoke or fog.
If it needs what?
Smoke or
Smoke
fog.
or fog? This shot. Yes, it does. The one on the left doesn't have any involved. There is atmosphere in the other two. That's actually a spotlight mount modifier, so you can find them here as well. And it's a really cool way to project light in a different way. We're not going to work with one of those today, but in this case, yeah, that projection is caused by the smoke and the fog coming out. I think it probably would have worked on the one on the right without any. There just would have been a bigger separation between that hard specular light coming out and his face. But we still would have gotten that specular highlight on the glasses. All of the reflection in the clothing would have still all happened. It just wouldn't have had that little bit of extra glow on the light itself. So with that in mind, let's take a shot here with a rim light, and then we can start to add in some of the reflections so you can see the difference. So we'll start with this here. Get back to my tether. I need some more Some more power. Just like that 44-inch modifier, this is a 12 by 36. It's one of my most used modifiers. I love this thing to death. The only downside is that if you're shooting a tall person, then you're trying to get full figure, it's not going to light them evenly. You're going to need a much longer strip box for that. But these strip boxes, one of my most used tools. This particular strip box right now, it has the baffles inside, but it also has this grid on it. The grid is exactly like those grids for that 7-inch. If you can't see the white, you're not getting light. So that is, I put it on here to keep it as narrow as possible. The 1 foot wide modifier already keeps it pretty skinny, and putting that egg crate on there means I can make it even skinnier. And I really love that for a sharp, crisp rim light. All right, so you can see how this one was lit here. If I have you take a step forward, maybe one more. All right. You can see the difference between these two lights, especially pay attention to the shoulder here. You can barely see the shoulder in this shot. It's because the light was kind of wrapped around front a little bit more, so there wasn't as much contrast. You're still getting light that spills across the whole thing and fills in that shoulder. There is a tonality there, and you can see that it goes from a more of a gray to a black in that exposure, and especially if we go to the color, you can see that there versus the sharpness of that, where it really fades over the shoulder. And all I did was step her forward. And the same thing happens in the face. When she was further back, we see more of her face. When I had her step forward and put the light more behind her, you can see that it became more of a profile shot. And I just took the tether out. That's always fun. Give me 1 second. Reconnect. All right. Now, if I step this back even further and angle it out at her, we'll continue that progression of getting more of a rim light and less of the front details. And again, this is all about observing, right? If I have her turn your head that way, all right, and you should be able to get that there. Have you turn back just a little bit, not quite. Keep going that way a little bit more. There you go. We can start to chin up a little. There we go. Not quite as much as I wanted. I'll step this forward a hair. What we're going to aim to get now is her jawline. There we go. So we start to describe that jawline. There, great. There we go. So now we're starting to describe that jawline a little bit, and it really starts to show there. We can probably see it better in the color. There we go. We start to get that jawline coming around here. A little bit of that neck, a little bit of that shoulder. We have one part of the story that we're telling. Without adding any other lighting, we're just going to use a bit of manipulation. Now, these V-flats, I love a good V-flat. They are cumbersome and a pain in the butt. They get beat up, they fall apart, and I love them so much. That is easily my most used tool, easily. For years, I fought getting one. I went, it's going to take up too much space. They're too expensive. It's foam board. It's just going to get eaten. It does. But you use it like crazy. That's why it gets eaten. It beats up your equipment because you're using it. And you can do so much with them. Everything from using the inside to create, a separation of the person from the light that's reflecting off of white walls that are surrounding them, to just cutting anything that you want. And it has the white option and the back option. If you haven't seen a V-flat before, the dual side gives you so many capabilities, especially if you're just beginning your lighting setup. You can buy something like this from V-flat World. You can make them yourself. There's so many options, and it is the best tool, best investment you'll make in your photography. It allows you to turn your studio into something that you couldn't otherwise have, which is really neat.
I'm putting the link to it in the chat, guys.
There you go.
Because you can buy it here.
What? No. They are amazing, and it is a worthwhile investment to get. The nice part about the V-flat World one, which is the change from making it yourself, is Don't let me hit you. That. So you can fold it up into a 40 by 40 and it gets stored in the closet and it's out of the way. You don't need it. Perfect. Lean it up against the wall. You don't have to worry about it. If you buy 8 foot by 4 foot sheets of foam board to make your own, they're weaker. You don't know how to fold them. That's a pain in the butt. This comes with a carrying case too, I think, right, Seth? A bag. So it's a way to protect it, stuff like that. So you have your options. Either way, best investment you'll make in your photography is having at least one of these.
The other thing is you can ship them. If you're doing a location job or you need them ordered in somewhere, you can get them as opposed to 8-foot size boards.
Oh God. Transport is no, and 40 by 40 will fit in a lot of trunks as well. So if you have a car that you're transporting, the 4-foot wide won't fit in a lot of smaller cars, but I have a Toyota Corolla and I can get this sucker inside, you know, like it's they thought ahead and said, oh, well, we got to make it small enough to go into trunks. And there you go. And their new version, this is the first one, I think. The new one has a magnetic enclosure on it, I believe, because these Velcro doesn't tend to stick around as much when it gets older. All right, so I'm using the outside of the white here. We're gonna put it pretty close to her because we're just doing the shorter portrait style thing. There's a photographic mathematic law that my artist brain is too dull to understand entirely, but it's called the inverse square law. And essentially it says that if you're this distance from a light and you have this amount of power, when you go this much further, it's a quarter of that power. So you're losing so much light by taking that light, hitting her, the rest of it bounces off of this back to her. You're not going to get a ton of power out of it. So the closer you can get this to her, the better off you're going to be. And that is kind of the trick to reflective lighting, is that. And we also have to make sure that because that egg crate's on there and we know our limitation with where the spread is going to happen, we have to make sure that that is going to hit this and then reflect back to her. There's a lot of tricks with it, but it takes practice and then you get it. Observing. All right. Let's take this shot here. Can you turn your face the other way? There you go. Great. All right. Let's use the color one as an example for this. Look at the difference between no V-flat and V-flat. That's all we did. Put the white up, and now look at the difference between that. The other fun part that I like in this is metals reflective is really fun. Metals tend to have there's no diffusion that happens in metal. Her shirt, all of the fabrics, there's going to be a bit of diffusion in that light where you'll get the textures, but it's not going to be a harsh, crisp thing. Her metal is really giving me a harsh light. And you can see in this, when we didn't use the V-flat, we got this awesome, just awesome, crisp piece of light. And in this picture, you can see that happened on the side of his face here, as well as that specular highlight and the glasses. But then on the other side, when we add the V-flat, we're getting more detail out of that because this is now reflecting onto that metal too. It's a much lighter source, but that's also kind of cool because it also gives a lot of dimension to that metal. And that happened here with his watch and his tie bar. That's not lit with anything except a white reflection. And that's a really cool way to describe elements of the subject and allowing all of that story to come out through that. Let's do another shot, but we're going to turn your face the other way. So this is where we're talking about which side of the face to put this on, which is what got us into this. So now we tried getting that rim light where we went, the broad side was just reflection. Now we're going to put the broad side into the light and let the reflection happen here. Black and white looks pretty cool, right? I dig that a lot. We go into the color, we see that reflection a bit more, but I love the black and white where you just see the earring too, right? Isn't that cool? And all that is a reflection into metal. It doesn't have the same diffusion as skin or clothing, so you really get a sharp, crisp highlight on that. But then you bring the color in, and you can start to see that separation there. To let you know when you look at this style, the creative style in this camera, this black and white, I've added contrast, I've added a little bit of clarity, I've dropped the shadows and the highlights a little bit. It's all in camera there. So that's why they don't quite translate to be the same thing from the color to the black and white. If I was to come across to my, here we go. If I was to come across to my Capture One settings and just enable the black and white, you can see it's much closer to the color. So that was a creative style choice that I had in my camera when I was shooting the black and white JPEGs. So there is a big difference between the creative style to show you guys what I can do with a single light and create that drama and all that separation versus the in-camera raw, which if you want to do it in post instead, is something that you can do. All right, so, okay, that was all I had in that presentation. So let's see here. We've tried a couple different things here. I want to open up to you guys and see if you have any questions for me or anything that you want to see that we can throw into a demo for you, because we have the lovely Erica here. So let's see if there's anything. I see that one's, I'm sorry.
My biggest thing is when to know when to use.
When do you use which technique?
Yeah, when someone asks you to shoot something, how do you know when to use what?
I mean, I think depending, you want to use a technique based on what, if you're talking about client work, yes?
Yeah.
I think you need to use it based on what your client needs. I'm not going to use a high contrast technique to describe a business person, unless that person's business is something really dramatic. If they're a high-priced attorney that fights, you know, big, powerful corporations and they want to look super powerful, you might have somebody come forward, really crush that Rembrandt light look on them. But you might say, we don't want to lose the hair. So let me see if I can do that quick for you. If we just even single light. Apologies for putting the light in front of you guys here, but I don't want to put the V flat in front of you. So
Right.
I think that's a better choice.
It's skinny.
Exactly.
That's got like 7 screens.
We use the back camera. So if we wanted to do something along the lines of, like, say, that Rembrandt lighting, but we don't want to completely lose her in the background. First off, maybe don't use a black background. Maybe it's a blue or a gray or something like that. But you can also then see if it, oh, I have to change my lighting first. My apologies. Drop that down to 30-second again. Bring this even closer. I think we lost it a little too much. I could drop the great paper too. I could do that. 1 second. Let's change that background. I was talking about it. Let's do it. This guy goes up, or this guy just goes down. Let's just do that. Maybe not. Let him do it. The shorter answer while he's dropping this is it depends on what your client's looking for. If it's a softer subject, you might not want to use one of these lighting, or you might want to bring in, like, do some clamshell lighting and throw a highlighter underneath them to boost the light. It's thinking about what is being asked of you. If it's client work, it's a lot different than shooting something like this where I want to tell a story. The story that I'm trying to describe in her versus the story the client's trying to tell. I use more dramatic lighting when I really want to describe something specific, whether it's a portrait that I'm taking of somebody or it's something they want me to share. But that's where you'd start to bring in different modifying things like a V-flat or another lighter or any of those other tools, which if you're doing headshots is a good tool to have. Oh, what kind of stuff do you shoot?
Yeah, mostly events, portraits, nightlife stuff.
Okay, so events, portraits, nightlife. There we see, that's kind of harsh, but you can see that separation now. Her hair's kind of dark, so it didn't bring in too much of my white, but I'd use a silver reflector there to really bring it out. Yeah, the nightlife stuff obviously is kind of you get what you get, and that image that I showed earlier with the black and white with the guy, that's something you can think about using, is taking the brighter light and putting it behind the person and having some kind of reflection up front, and it can start to bring it out. Sometimes an off-camera flash or the on-camera flash style can be a little harsh and really create some lines you don't want. So using something like a reflector to bounce that light can be a really cool technique. It's situational too, right? If you want to show they're in a club or at whatever the event is, a marathon or whatever. If you want to be, we're outside, the sun is out, and you want all of that described, I would put it behind him and reflect. If you're trying to say this is more of a, I'm happy, we're all excited, and it's a beautiful day, and you want the blue in the background, put the sun coming at them and use some diffusion to make sure they can open their eyes, stuff like this. Yeah, it all depends on what story you're telling, I think, which is good. Yeah.
And someone just wants to know, do you use TTL?
Do I use TTL? No. I don't use anything automatic. I have always been a pain in the butt and like to do things the hard way. I think TTL is great if you just want to grab a flash and kind of go and you're looking for kind of nice even lighting. I think it's a good tool to use. If you don't know TTL, it means through the lens, which essentially your adjustments on your trigger and the lights are going to be based upon the exposure that you're looking for. They're looking for a proper exposure by using TTL through the lens. I find it to be a little boring, not because of any other reason than I'm difficult and I like to choose my own settings. This stuff right here that I'm saying is a little too overexposed, it is because I'm not using TTL. But I like to be able to adjust it because I'm saying I want it to be darker or more dramatic, or I want to capture it this way, and I don't want my light meter and camera to tell me what to use. It's the same reason I shoot everything in manual. The only automatic that I'll use a lot is the automatic auto focusing, and that's just because the auto focusing can take away, if I'm directing the model and talking to her, I don't have to think about my focus. And the focuses are so good these days that it's just now it's kind of a no-brainer. As long as you have the point in the right spot, you can capture. So that's what I like for that. Good. All right. Any other questions? Anything you guys want to see? We'll wrap it up here. Good. Seth, do you have any questions? He doesn't have any questions either. Seth knows more than me, so that's why. He's brilliant. Best teacher ever, you guys. You need to watch all of his classes, all of his lessons.
You can follow Justin Piccari at the lower third right there. All right. Do your sign off. Don't be awkward.
Don't be, you're asking me not to be awkward? Gosh, you don't know me at all. All right, thank you guys so much for coming out. I appreciate everybody being here in the audience. I really hope you take something away from this. The biggest thing, the most important thing, get out there and shoot. Shoot, keep shooting, shoot every day, carry your camera. All of this stuff here, whether you want to use a flash or you just want to observe the sun, it does the same thing in terms of it's all about the observation. Look at what you're shooting, think about it, make decisions. Everything in that frame matters, and we get to choose it. It's the best part about being a photographer. We're telling the story. Thank you guys so much for coming out, for taking the time to watch this. Everybody that's watching online, I really appreciate it. I'm excited to make this happen. Thank you so much to this wonderful model, Erica. Everybody, let's give her a round of applause, huh? Yeah, this is wonderful. She brings it out. Thank you guys so much. And yeah, keep shooting.
All right, cool. Thanks, guys.